It was in that context that I heard of Matthew Goniwe.
Matthew was a brilliant maths and science teacher.
He was a community leader.
He really should have become the Minister of Education in the post-apartheid government. We even talked about it, before he died.
They were scared of him.
I never thought that they would do that thing to a person such as Matthew.
When that message came out to him saying, OR Tambo says, go to exile. You must leave now. He said, I'm not going anywhere, I'm going to stay here. Why would you go to exile? You will die even there in exile. You will also die here.
On the night of June 27, 1985, Matthew Goniwe...
Goosebump-inducing documentary, isn't it? Matthew Goniwe's story is brought to life in a new documentary titled The Servant Leader. South Africa is set to witness the powerful revival of one of its greatest struggle icons. The documentary captures his story with rare archival footage, intimate interviews and reflections from those who knew and worked alongside him. Sibusiso Mahlangu, the Chief Executive Officer at the Matthew Goniwe School of Leadership and Governance, joins us now in studio. Mr. Mahlangu, very good morning. Thanks for joining us. Welcome.
Good morning, Simpiwe, and thank you for having us.
Well, it's an absolute pleasure. I mean, The Servant Leader revives the story of a man, I suppose, whose influence still shapes South Africa's domestic and democratic consciousness. So what does it mean to you as a man in charge of an institution that bears Matthew Goniwe's name?
It's a huge responsibility. That we protect his legacy and the story of his life is told in a factual and a correct manner. And we take this opportunity to make sure that we teach the current and the coming generations and also draw inspiration from his leadership style, which was a 7 leadership style based on community service. These are the leaders who viewed leadership not only as a status, but service to the people.
And for so many South Africans, especially those who knew him, Matthew Goniwe was a symbol of courage, leadership, and public servant leadership. So what inspired the creation of this particular documentary, and why was now the opportune moment to tell his story afresh?
There was no any other better time, Simpiwe. We felt as an institution that we need to uphold his legacy. As I've already indicated, the story must be told without any distortions or contradictions. The story must serve as a lesson and a point of reference that the freedom that we enjoy today, it was after the flow of blood of many of our people. And I think given the challenges that the country is facing, I think we believe it is the opportune time to draw lessons from his leadership style.
Yeah, sure. And having said that, what does servant leadership mean to you in a South Africa still grappling with, ethical crises and inequality?
That we put our communities and people that we lead at the center of our decision making, at the center of our activities and programs that we do. We should be driven and always strive to make sure that whatever we do, it is for the benefit of the people. The people are at the center of all the decisions that leadership makes at any given point in time.
And I did mention in the intro that the film uses archival footage and intimate interviews. So what are some of the layers of his life and leadership that this particular documentary uncovers that we didn't know before about him?
Yes, I think one of the things that we will find out from the documentary, probably maybe let me draw you because the production is completed. One, it is very clear that Matthew Goniwe was part of the collective. In one of the footages we have his son Nyaniso talking about him as a father, a teacher, a revolutionary, and a community leader. So it's also important to remember that this man was a teacher who was ahead of his time at that given moment, who not only saw teaching as teaching, but it was an act of defiance, making sure that he creates space for political awareness and social consciousness.
And how does the servant leader then go beyond the textbook narrative, I mean, beyond the Craddock Four, to reveal the man behind the movement?
Look, his story cannot be isolated outside of the Craddock Four. So I think it's important to remember that he was part of that collective, although a leader in his own right. So we as an institution, we are also not trying to isolate him, but we are drawn to Matthew Goniwe because the institution one is named after him, for obvious reasons. He was a teacher, a very prominent one, and a community leader as well.
And how important is it for the younger audiences and the younger generations, you know, to see this story told visually, I would say, not just in history books?
Yes, our intention is that probably this at some point can be used as part of the curriculum of history of this country. We also need, as I say, we also need to draw inspiration from how, from humble beginnings, leaders like Matthew Goniwe could really instill fear in the apartheid regime, which led to their death. And
Matthew Goniwe was a teacher, he was an activist, he was an educator, and someone who believed deeply in high-quality education. And as we've seen in the trailer, someone just mentioned or even suggested that he should have been the Minister of Education at the time. So how does that legacy continue in the form of the work that the School of Leadership still does?
The school does very important work, SMP, in making sure that there's good leadership in schools and as well as governance, because our research tells us that the success of running of these schools largely depend on good governance and leadership. We also do train teachers on a number of areas. One critical area is early childhood development, which is ECD, where there is a shortage of qualified practitioners. There's also new developments in the world on AI. So we've recently completed qualifications on AI, coding and robotics that are primarily for teachers. But our hope is that these can be accessed by any other people, especially our youth, where the rate of unemployment is pretty high.
And in your personal engagement with his story, what are some of the elements or qualities of his leadership do you find most striking or perhaps intrusive of leaders we have today?
Look, I think certain things you can't fake. So Matthew was a very authentic leader, transparent. He led by example, as I think we've already said. He was driven by passion for education, passion for justice, which he thought those were inseparable, and he strongly believed that education is a key weapon to liberate our people.
Yeah, and this documentary reminds us that leadership rooted in service delivery, rooted in integrity, can of course change the course of history. So how do you translate those principles into the programs and the leadership programs and training offered at your institution?
Look, we make sure that we incorporate all these principles, all these learnings, as you'll know that these are still relevant today and they have shaped our democracy. So we're making sure that the lessons are imparted, and I think the documentary will go a long way into making sure that his spirit lives with us as much as he may be gone.
All right, Mr. Mhlanga, great chatting to you. And when can you see this documentary?
We have a private screening early 2026, but people can follow the updates on our social media pages. On Facebook, it's Matthew Goniwe School of Leadership and Governance, and on Instagram, it's just Matthew Goniwe.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Great chatting to you.
Really appreciate the time.
Great chatting to you. Thank you so much. And we certainly hope that your institution can help nurture a new generation of leaders who embody courage, change that Matthew Goniwe embodied. Great
Certainly.
chatting.
Thank you very much.
Well, Matthew Goniwe's story is brought to life in a new documentary titled The Servant Leader.